is Norma Collier, and I am now retired, but I practice vocational evaluation for approximately 34 years. I started working in a workshop in West Virginia.
Is that like a sheltered workshop?
A shelter workshop. My clients were from vocational rehabilitation, from workman's compensation, Social Security, and also students with developmental disabilities.
So the ages were like 16 to...
16 to probably people in their 40s.
Okay.
Some in their 50s.
Okay.
The people who had been disabled for whatever reason in their work situation. Then I worked in Fairfax County Public Schools.
And that's in the Washington, D.C.?
In Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. area. And I worked, the first few years of my employment, I worked primarily with students with learning disabilities. And then my student load included students with developmental disabilities, with physical disabilities, intellectual disabilities.
And those kids were basically 16
and up, yes.
So up to 21
up to
or 22?
22, yes. Paper and pencil tests. We used computer adapted tests.
How long did your assessments usually take?
When we started doing assessments, it took 2 weeks. And it was 4 students to 1 evaluator and an aide. Yes, I mean, there is a couple. One of them was a student from Central America, from El Salvador, who was deaf and did not speak English. So he had been considered to be mental
disability,
disability,
mental retardation.
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean
The names have changed over the last several decades.
To use the wrong one.
No, they've changed. That was, you're talking in the last 30 or so years,
yes.
40 years, right?
Yes. Yeah. So he was referred to vocational assessment, and my native language is Spanish. So I was able to communicate with him. He knew some sign languages, but then I found out that he could write in Spanish. And from there, he took off. I found out that he had been in the armed forces. He actually even had piloted planes. And one of the teachers in carpentry took a real interest in him. And he was actually later employed in a job. So that was... and he demonstrated through the assessment what he could do, hands-on, and also his intellectual capability. Another case was a case that I did with a co-worker of mine who specializes in AT. And this girl had cerebral palsy and was wheelchair confined and could only communicate through a stick. And we adapted work samples. In addition to that, she was legally blind.
Did she use a mouth stick or did she have a switch?
She had a switch, yes.
So that switch was attached to a communication device?
So we adapted work samples.
How'd you do that?
Using the computer, we
scanned the material.
Yes. And And also we made models
To
of
help
the work
teach.
samples to help teach, and also for her to visualize, because when you are blind and have the problem, this is very difficult. It's not that you don't know what to do, it's just that sometimes you cannot conceptualize the task, and it has to be adapted so that you can.
So she could use her
you can use
tactile
it. Yes.
strengths.
Yeah, and also whatever visual modality she had left. So we did that.
And by doing that, what did you find out about her?
We found out that she could use the computer, and she could do some very basic clerical tasks. So that was very exciting because, up to then, there was nothing that she could do. Also, what I did I worked on her interests, and so that she could also use skills in her leisure world, to find out what it is that she liked to do, what kind of activities she liked to do. So it was not only those that were confined to employment, but also to her, whole world.
So what were some recommendations that came from that for her? Did she end up going into a training program? Or?
I think it was mostly that her mother took the recommendations and
helped to pave a program for
the program. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In 2 weeks, yes.
Did you feel like you could have ever obtained what you needed in a day with one or two tests?
Not with the type of students that we had with disabilities. No.
They had more complex needs.
Complex needs, yes. Okay. I mean, because in one day you can observe the behavior with that particular day. It takes several days to observe the behavior, to see what their skills are. Whether you can in a day maybe you might be able to see what their weaknesses are, but not necessarily what all their skills are, what all the range of skills. Yeah.
So while you were using all these approaches, it sounds like you were taking notes.
Yes.
All the time.
All the time, taking notes, making observations regarding their behavior, regarding their abilities, their skills. Well, it is, people coming from different backgrounds, from different countries, from different worldviews. They have been taught to learn in a specific way. They have been taught to see the world in a way, or as children, they may not have worked with puzzles. And here you give them a test, that requires putting pieces together, and they just don't know how to approach it. They don't know how to organize the task. So it is also part of the learning style would be also teaching the individual on how to learn. And I think one of the most important aspects is for them to understand how they learn. Because often they don't, and to be able to communicate, to be an advocate later on.
Did you find sometimes when you're working with people that, and students and adults, that certain situations that you had them in, you saw them able to understand more clearly than in others? I guess what you were saying earlier with work samples, that was one of those examples.
Yes, with work samples.
Or work tasks.
Work tasks, yes.
Where you were mentioning where you had a small engine that would be the same in their country, which would be in a different situation, but the context had the same tool. So,
or a sewing machine, because there are many aspects to being able to use a sewing machine. You need spatial perception. You need there's many skills incorporated in it. Manual dexterity, the ability to conceptualize a task, and it's not necessarily that you're watching and observing whether this person can use a sewing machine. It's all the skills that they are demonstrating to you that they can do. The same with a small engine.
A lot of note taking going on.
Note-taking, yes. How do they conceptualize the test? How do they approach it? What are they showing you that they can do with the test?
So
wrote a comprehensive